What makes a great villain? Here's Rob Lucci, the bloodthirsty menace of a man who was once the final boss of my favorite section in One Piece, Water 7. He's violent, bloodthirsty, and a sick man. Today, we're looking back at the entire history of Rob Lucci's character in the series as we dive deep into his twisted psychology, and I'll tell you why he is the most underappreciated villain in One Piece. And we'll even take a look back at the forgotten Rob Lucci cover story, which gives us a different look and aspect to the character. And stay tuned to the very end of the video where I tell you the true potential of Rob Lucci's character moving forward. So make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy these types of videos, as a lot goes into it, whether it be research, scripting, editing, and so subscribing is the best way to show support to your favorite channels. Now let's dive straight into the story of One Piece's Rob Lucci. So Rob Lucci, he was first introduced during the Water 7 saga, which I've enjoyed rereading just to make this video. Initially, he was portrayed as this quirky shipwright working for Iceberg, the mayor and lead shipwright of Water 7, which is known as the Island of Water in a paradise of shipwrights. His introduction is actually really funny because he is simply this hardworking tank top and top hat wearing shipbuilder, and I've always loved the top hat design, especially with Sabo, so with Rob Lucci I was all for it. But while he looks serious at a first glance, it is quickly thrown off with ventriloquism. Yes, Rob Lucci walks around with a white pigeon on his shoulder who talks for him. That is, I hope this talking bird is just Lucci being a weirdo ventriloquist and not the actual evil mastermind of the One Piece verse. I think the funniest thing about this white pigeon is that there was this one scene where we see Rob Lucci in his coat outside, he puts the coat on, and then you see him put a little coat on the pigeon, man. I just, at that point I was like, man, Rob Lucci he's hilarious, but he's a straight weirdo, man. And because of all of this is why Luffy would go on to nickname him Pigeon Guy. So yeah, he's portrayed in this quirky, goofy way, which ultimately would be a great way to subvert our expectations. See, during the Water 7 and Enos Lobby arcs, we get glimpses of this amazing mystery, this conspiracy. Our crewmate Nico Robin, who at the point had just recently joined the Straw Hats after leaving her own secret society of Baroque Works, is now interacting with these very suspicious men in black and she meets up with one of these members and all we see is a black suit and tie. And remember that mayor that Lucci works for? Well, news spreads of a murder attempt on Mayor Iceberg, but the thing is that the #1 suspect was actually Nico Robin. And for a while this idea is entertained. We get to see a haunting page of panels that shows us that Lucci and the other shipwrights were killed on the ground lifeless, but it soon revealed that Mayor Iceberg was actually betrayed by his own employees who turned out to be part of the secret agent group of the government, an elite crew that is only rumored to exist by the world, CP9 or Cypher Pol 9, and they've been on a mission to spy on Iceberg for years because he has the blueprints to Pluton, one of the most powerful ancient weapons from 900 years in the past. And Rob Lucci is the leader of this group. The mysterious conspiracy vibes are only amplified because, as you know, the greatest mysteries always have to involve at least one faked death. What I really loved about witnessing this classic anime betrayal at the time is how dedicated Rob Lucci and the other shipwrights were to their role. They completely deceived this guy working under him and gaining his trust after 5 years. And when they confront Iceberg, Lucci even goes out of his way to say just how hard they worked despite it only being a fake job. According to one of the members, Khalifa, they had originally hoped to acquire the Pluton blueprints from Mayor Iceberg without harming him at all. Although knowing Rob Lucci, I'm sure he was the only one really holding back because he just has the tendency to be a twisted, violent dude. We actually get to see his true colors come out right here as he kicks the at Iceberg, saying, "You're not my boss anymore." So now imagine, we've just learned all of this and Luffy now comes charging straight into the room, challenging Lucci to a battle. Luffy being Luffy, he doesn't care why or what Lucci's doing, he just knows that Robin is a crew member and that these people need to be taken down immediately to protect his friend. And what we witness is that these guys have superpowers with distinct martial arts techniques that are mastered after years of training in the art of Rokushiki. And Rokushiki, it's a combination of 6 different techniques, and if you master all 6, you can also learn the final 7 technique, and keep that in mind for later on in the video. One requirement for Rokushiki is you have to be superhuman from the beginning, and if you see anything from the early One Piece days, the story makes it very clear that guys like Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro are essentially superhuman. The CP9 have different techniques, but Lucci has mastered all of them and is by far the strongest. These techniques range from winded kick blast, full-on iron defensive capabilities, and then my personal favorite, the ability to fly or skywalk in One Piece. flying has always just looked like the most fun to me. But let me know in the comments, what is your favorite of the Rokushiki techniques? Now you can see from this alone, Lucci being a full master of Rokushiki and the strongest member and leader of CP9, he was being hyped up as a nasty martial artist and combative opponent. And to make him even more of a menace, Rob Lucci also has a devil fruit, the Neko no Mi model leopard. He's a leopard man, a man with his own devil fruit, which means he can go in and out of his 3 different forms: human, leopard, or hybrid. Personally, when I first saw his hybrid form, I thought it looked pretty silly with this overly Fist of the North Star ridiculousness when it comes to his upper body looking crazy. The devil fruit gives Rob Lucci all of the capabilities of a leopard, as he can now take on the characteristics of the carnivorous cat, appearing more bloodthirsty than ever. And a quick side note, I've always wondered if the devil fruit and devil fruit users are fated in some supernatural way. Does the devil fruit enhance an already bloodthirsty nature here? I think there could be some credence to this idea, as the leopard fruit might have been a perfect match for Lucci. And let's get straight into Lucci versus Luffy. Luffy gets absolutely destroyed by Lucci, and it's honestly a wash. The classic One Piece trope is back of Luffy losing the first time to the main boss of the saga, and then he'll eventually have a rematch with him later on. So yeah, Lucci defeats Luffy very quickly, throwing him out the building, and they tie up Iceberg and one of their former employees and leave them in the trap building that is burning down. This is only a glimpse of how hardcore Lucci is and what makes him such a great villain. A great introduction to say the least. Meanwhile, while all of this is going on, Luffy and the Straw Hats are understanding the situation, trying to process everything, because while the Straw Hats are very powerful in their own right, the CP9 are a serious and dangerous enemy that just wiped the floor with them. And let's not forget, they work for the world government, which comes with its own set of problems. With Luffy falling to CP9, Robin becomes a captive prisoner and goes with them to the sea train, which is headed to the world government's judicial island. Because of her knowledge and threat to the world, she is finally going to be taken to face justice at CP9's base after being hunted down for decades. In the meantime, after defeating the Straw Hats, Lucci confronts Frankie, this boisterous Italian shipwright who is suspected as the man who now owns the Pluton blueprints passed down from Iceberg. Just like Robin and Luffy, Lucci and CP9 essentially overwhelm Frankie and capture him. I don't want to go into Frankie too much here, but just know I love Frankie. He's definitely one of my favorite characters in the story. And also another side note, during this, Usopp, one of the Straw Hat pirates, is captured as well. So now Frankie, Usopp, and Robin are being taken away by Lucci and his crew to Enies Lobby. And this would launch the Enies Lobby event into full action, where you have the Straw Hats charging after them, heading to the government island, a complete disruption to save their friends. Enies Lobby was a banger, as Luffy and his crews caused chaos in the world government, declare war against them, and challenge CP9 to save Robin. And the final climax of this event is a rematch between Straw Hat Luffy and Rob Lucci. And this battle is one for the history books, man, because garnering the title of the best pre-time skip fight in all of One Piece matters. There's a few things that made this fight so great, and one being how closely matched Luffy and Lucci were. Luffy, who just previously got destroyed, he is leveling up fast, and now he's basically on par with Lucci, if not a little bit behind. And so Luffy, who didn't stand a chance previously, quickly adapted, because he for one figured out the Rokushiki techniques to a certain extent by analyzing the CP9 in their previous battles, and now that he had a better grasp of what they're doing, he could counter it much easier. Combine this with Luffy getting some huge buffs and power, unlocking his first major power up in the series at this point, Gear 2, and then Gear 3 shortly after. Overall, from Luffy's side, it was a fantastic fight. It's really Luffy just charging in, just grabs a chicken out of his pocket, takes a bite, and he's ready to fight Lucci, save Robin. And then on the other side, you have the cold and heartless Rob Lucci ready to defend the world government. The fight early on is plenty of trading blows from both sides, as you have Luffy doing everything he can, pulling out Gear 2, Gear 3, and plenty of new tricks to take him down. There's a certain level of respect on both sides. Luffy, who respects Lucci as a dangerous foe who could kill the Straw Hats, and Lucci respecting Luffy as a strong captain of his crew. One really cool aspect about this fight is the environment, because you have to imagine how personal the fight is, and the way that they're just at the top of this giant tower where no one could see what's happening. It really is just Luffy and Lucci going at it. Lucci grabbing boxes and chucking them at Luffy, and then Luffy straight up punching Lucci through walls. And in the midst of all this, the setting gets even crazier because a Buster Call is enacted, which means cannon fire, explosion, and complete military bombarding destruction going on in the surrounding area. This Buster Call is blowing up the entire island that they're fighting on, while Luffy and Lucci are stuck right in the middle of it, continuing their fight unfazed. It really feels like the conclusion to an epic pirate short movie at this point. And it's around this time where we finally get to see a mini flashback to Rob Lucci's youth. But before we get into Rob Lucci and his violent past, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell like Luffy and Skypiea for future videos. Also, if you're interested in picking up any manga or anime related products, check out my affiliate link in the description. It helps us a lot, and all the money made through the link goes straight back into funding future videos and the channel as a whole. Rob Lucci is 28 during the Battle of Venus lobby, but let's go back and revisit his story as a child where he was only 12 years old. The story goes that 15 years ago there was a kingdom. The kingdom had been invaded by pirates and 500 soldiers were captured, essentially held for ransom with demands of the keys to the kingdom. In desperation, the world government ended up sending in a young boy, and this would be a young Lucci. Young Lucci is a beast, man, because he infiltrates the pirate hideout just like he did to Mayor Iceberg. And you might be thinking, oh, so he's gonna save the soldiers, right? Was he a hero turned villain by the corruption of the world government? Well, no, not at all actually. Instead, young Lucci kills the 500 soldiers and starts a beef with the pirates who are pissed off because now they have no leverage. They start launching cannonballs at him and he's just tanking them. And all these pirates, they're attempting to blast this kid into the next dimension. But Lucci, he tanks every single cannonball like a G. And once they ran out of cannons to fire, he walked over to the pirate ship and beheads the captain. I mean, what kind of tragic backstory is this? You see, the violence, this tendency to kill was always in Rob Lucci's nature. He was born as a certified killer. Trust me, I was always expecting to see a tragic backstory too, but the reality is that we got the exact opposite from Lucci's backstory, and it was even better. The story reinstates the idea that he is truly a bad dude. There's no empathy or sympathy to be had for him. There's no pity or remorse. There's no talk no jutsu here, no debating about ideologies to try to sway him to change his ways. Lucci is a goddamn menace, and that's what he's always been at his core. And I love it because this is why I wonder about the devil fruit again. He probably didn't have the devil fruit at that time. It's much more likely that he received it later on in his career from the world government and his boss. And after this event, Lucci becomes an official CP9 intelligence agent at the age of only 13, after training alongside other potential cypherpole prodigies his entire childhood. You could make the argument that he's been completely indoctrinated into this lifestyle, but I think it's just more likely that Lucci was always a twisted child from the jump. In One Piece, one recurring thing that Oda likes to do is giving each important character in the government a sense of justice, an ideology of sorts. And what do you think Lucci's was? Dark justice. This dude is hardcore. He's essentially the world government's child prodigy who became known for the reputation of the strongest, most cold-blooded killer in the history of CP9. And so with this context, the fight between Luffy and Lucci continues. And as it goes on, it just keeps getting better and better, man. Luffy is showcasing Gear 3 for the first time, and it's a giant blown up rubber fist. I think Gear 2 was just more shocking, and I think I liked it more overall. Gear 3 is pretty cool, man. He hits Lucci so hard that he flies out the tower and lands on one of the busted called ships. And Luffy just continues with the offensive barrage, going into Gear 3 again, expanding his leg and destroying the entire ship. There's even a moment where Lucci actually goes into this pure leopard form and takes a fat chomp at Luffy's arm, piercing him. It's these back and forths that just keep going on and on for the entire fight that always keep you on the edge of your seat, waiting to see what each of them is going to bring out next. Also, a side note, but after rereading this arc and focusing on this fight, it has some really cool art and paneling. You got side by sides of Lucci and Luffy, the back and forth attacks, and then Gear 2 and 3, they're all really memorable. You know, CP9, they're an elite group, but still none of the fights push the Straw Hats to their limits like this one did. Luffy is struggling to breathe, he's wheezing, and Lucci, his legs are beginning to give out. Somehow though, they continue to find the energy to trade massive blows. Luffy with the disgusting barrage of Gatlings, and by far my favorite Lucci technique called the Rokyogan, which is ultimately the master of the 6 styles attacks. Another cool thing is that to preserve energy and to utilize it more efficiently, Rob Lucci shrinks down from his hulking form to a little bit more slimmed down and more thin on the upper body. I like this design a lot better as it's more sleek and a more clean design overall, and the fact that he could do this with his hybrid form mixed in with the 6 styles is a really cool added detail. And now keep in mind, although there's a buster call, it's tough for the Marines to see what's going on, but there's 4 people witnessing this fight, and that is Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and Frankie, and they're cheering Luffy on as they need him to finish this off so they can make their escape after already freeing Robin. You know, I said Lucci is hardcore, but he claims that he'll follow Nico Robin to the ends of the earth to see her die in the name of dark justice. He finishes off this statement in with another Ryokyogon, the most brutal one yet, which brings Luffy down, collapsing in pain. And since the Straw Hats are watching, we need some more context again because Luffy and Usopp had this previous falling out where they argued and even fought at Water 7. But here Usopp doesn't have his mask on, so he's yelling at Luffy, telling him to finish off Lucci. But why this is so important is because it gives Luffy the most insane adrenaline rush that I've ever seen. It's the final spurt of energy and willpower that he needed, and Lucci attacks with another Ryokyogon. And what I love about this is that it shows that Lucci can just spam out these final moves. It's insane. You gotta think, like, this is his third one. And even Luffy's like, man, I'm not gonna fall for that again. But Lucci, using his killer instincts, grabs Luffy and holds him in place with his long leopard tail, forcing Luffy to take the blunt force of the attack. And so at this point I'm thinking, man, Luffy's done, man. I don't know how Luffy does it, but sheer willpower and sheer adrenaline rush withstands this attack and has the passion to throw out one final barrage of Gatling punches. It's incredible that he is even standing at this point, but this final attack allowed Luffy to finish off Lucci and protect his crew. What a fight. That was just the most insane ending to a fight, and it was back and forth, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, this fight was so good because you have Lucci and Luffy going back and forth, going down to the very end. There's so much on the line, there's so much tension, there's so much at stake here, saving Nickel Robin, and Lucci's their golden boy, he's their prodigy. I highly recommend checking out this fight in the anime because with Luffy's voice acting and he's just throwing out a bunch of barrages of attacks, it is such a fun fight. For a series that gets a bad rep for its goofy and weak fights, hopefully you can see why some people say it is their favorite fight in the entire series. And Lucci might have not been the most overpowered and most powerful opponent that Luffy's ever faced, but he was the perfect boss to wrap up the Water 7 saga. Let me know in the comments, is this your favorite Luffy fight? And I know some people, they skip the cover stories, that they just don't pay attention, or maybe you were anime only during this time. But I want to bring it up because there's a CP9 Rob Lucci cover story that deals with the aftermath of the Buster Call, how they escaped that entire situation, and the overall impacts of it. You see, after being knocked out by Luffy, Lucci's in a coma-like state where Blueno, another CP9 agent, has to physically pick him up and carry him on his shoulder, using his Door Devil Fruit powers to escaping his lobby's Buster Call. And because CP9's boss Spandam didn't want to take the blame, he sent out a search party to capture CP9 so they could take the blame for the destruction of Venus Lobby. Essentially, Spanda is selling out his employees, and you'll get to see why I really like this cover story, but the main reason is that it shows how fickle the world government can be, and it gives us a different view on Rob Lucci and the CP9 agents. I think something that's interesting here is that Spandam's decision is a very stereotypically piratey action. No honor, no level of accountability or loyalty or responsibility, but I also love how we're seeing the camaraderie and sort of brotherhood of the CP9 agents and the loyalty they have for each other, that they're being raised up together and working together all these years. You know, I'm sure there was times when Lucci saved them in the past, or he had to come through clutch for them sometimes because he is the strongest. And so now you have this cover story where CP9's being hunted down, but also they're trying to give Rob Lucci some medical attention ASAP. This dude's unconscious, pretty much dying in their arms. There's even a moment where Lucci's CP9 rival, Jabra the Wolfman, is carrying Luffy on his back, and it's these little moments that give me so much more respect for the agents. Eventually we get to see Kumadori, another agent, street dancing Odin style in the rain, making an utter fool of himself. And then you have Kaku, Jabra, Blueno starting up these street side circus acts as well, with the goal of stacking up as much bread as possible, with the goal being so they could pay for Lucci's medical expenses. And honestly, it's a very humanizing moment for CP9. So after pulling up enough cash together, they check in Lucci to a hospital, and while waiting for a few days for him to wake up, we get like this montage of CP9 going shopping, going out to dinner, they're hanging out, enjoying the city. It's fun, you know, it's lighthearted, and you get a slice of life vibe, a different perspective on it. You start to realize, man, it's like these are almost a government's version of a pirate crew. Eventually, Lucci does wake up, and the pigeon's going crazy. He's never been more happy in his life to see his buddy Lucci alive. But how does the group celebrate? We're going bowling, and the rest of the cover story is CP9 dodging ops, being hunted down. The next place the CP9 heads to is their hometown, the island that they were raised and all brought up together. It's kind of interesting seeing the next generation of young kids, the future of CP9. And even here, the Marines track them down and invade the area. Now this is where we get one of the best cover story pages, which is CP9 all blacked out, silhouetted, and all you see is their eyes. And they're ready to defend their home. After defeating these Marines, we wouldn't see Rob Rob Lucci again until after the time skip, but after going back and rereading this entire cover story all together, I have to say I really enjoyed this, and it gave me a different perspective on all of CP9 as a whole. Now, when we finally do get to see Rob Lucci reintroduced, he has a promotion. He is now the leader of Cypher Pol Aegis Zero, or CP0, and this branch of the government is a crew that serves directly under the Celestial Dragons, the evil elite of the One Piece world. He still has his iconic pigeon, the top hat, but instead of that all-black look, Lucci's outfit is now an all-white affair. I really like the all-black look, but for Lucci specifically, this all-white is even cleaner. I can't say the same thing for his buddy Kaku, but after receiving this promotion, we first see CP0 Lucci at the Holy Land of Marijoa, the land where the Celestial Dragons reside. But Lucci, he isn't just a servant to the gods, he's a full-on believer in this power structure. We've seen a couple characters in the One Piece world completely worship the Celestial Dragons without question, and he is one of these guys. During the Reverie, there's a situation where St. Charlos, a pathetic and disgusting Celestial Dragon, lays his eyes on a princess, and because he's a guy who previously we've seen is permitted slaves and whatever beautiful women he wants, he tries taking the mermaid princess for himself. Lucci appears defending Charlos and the Celestial Dragons as a whole, stating that their godliness gives them the rights to do whatever they please, fully buying into this propaganda and delusion. And to fully demonstrate the loyalty that he has, we see another Celestial Dragon, Saint Mojgard, step in and demand to let the princess go, and he attacks Charlos. But what does Lucci do? He has to pick a side, right? Nope, Lucci, he's staying true to his beliefs, and he is paralyzed from going against either one of these, and he has to comply with Mojgard here, simply due to the fact that he is a Celestial Dragon. But why I'm really nostalgic for Rob Lucci right now is because Oda is deciding to finally bring him back one more time during the Egghead arc. Rob Lucci is currently attacking Vegapunk, and in the most recent chapter of this recording, it appears like we're getting a rematch between Luffy and Lucci. I wouldn't be surprised to see him be around the Yonko Commander area of power. After all, this is a world government's prodigy, and I would like to think that Rob Lucci could return as a powerful enemy. Anyone this far into the new world deserves an automatic certain level of respect, especially when he's the leader. I still personally want to see a conflict between Sword and CP0. I could even see Lucci being a very vital character to the world government in the expected final war. You know, he's a very useful person, strength-wise, infiltration, he can build ships, and with his blind loyalty, it's only a matter of time before we get to see more of him. Over time, I honestly believe that Rob Lucci has become one of the most underappreciated villains in One Piece. I think this stems from a few things. First, I think the further we go on into the post-time skip era of One Piece, we've been blessed with amazing villains, and while I love me some Cypher Pol, Rob Lucci, they just don't stack up in comparison to some of One Piece's later ideas like Kaido, Big Mom, Doflamingo, and Katakuri. I think another thing is that his devil fruit is just simply on the more simple side, and as a character, he just didn't have the same impact on the rest of the world like a Yonko. Still, he was the perfect villain for Water 7.